Welcome, Jack. Welcome back again.
Hi there.
Hi. Jack is co-founder and managing director of Thirdfort. Thirdfort recently started to use ReadID to comply with the so-called safe harbor checks in the UK. We'll talk about that later on. Before starting Thirdfort 4 years ago, Jack worked at the Barclays investment bank and he studied economics at Durham University. Jack joins us from London, from the UK, so welcome. Jack, many of us don't know Thirdfort or don't know Thirdfort yet. Can you explain a bit more about what you do at Thirdfort and what kind of services you deliver?
Of course, yes. So we're a startup that was founded by myself and my co-founder Ollie just over 3 years ago. So we are relatively young in terms of how long we've been around as a business. What we look to do is transform the way that people buy and sell property in the UK. You're very much focused on the residential UK market for now. We're particularly focused on the legal part of the process, which, like in many countries, is very, very slow and difficult to wade through as an individual that isn't familiar with the process, trying to, maybe a first-time buyer or somebody that's been through the process before. So we're really focused on trying to make that element of the buying and selling journey as easy as possible, and in particular, focusing in on the problems of fraud and money laundering within the sector that are still growing at a very fast pace in the UK.
Yeah. Can you explain a bit more on why you started, or why did you see a need for Thirdfort and its services?
Yeah. So we started the business, just over 3 years ago, and the initial kind of trigger for us to look at this sector was a friend of ours that got defrauded out of £25,000. They were a first-time buyer trying to, get on the property ladder for the first time, and they sent this money effectively to what they thought was their law firm. Emails were hacked and misdirected, and that money went missing, and they never got that back. Terrible, terrible thing that happened to this close friend of ours. So that got us thinking. Well, first of all, how is that possible? How in this modern world, when he had a lawyer, a proper lawyer, was he able to lose that amount of money and also not have any form of insurance? And he couldn't go ahead and buy the house, right? He had to go back to the drawing board and save some more money to buy it. That got us thinking, how the hell is that possible in this day and age? And then second of all, how is it possible that everybody you speak to, especially in the UK, but it's a problem globally, has a terrible time when they're trying to transact property? You never meet somebody that says, yes, I just bought a house the other day. It was really fast. It was really smooth. It was really enjoyable. And there were no problems on the journey. That never happens. And I think that there's so many reasons for that, but the more that we looked at the sector, the more we saw the legal process in particular is very, very difficult and disjointed. And one of the root causes of that problem is a lack of software and a lack of proper innovation on the software side to not only service the consumers, so the poor guy and girl who are they're trying to buy a house for the first time potentially, and they're also trying to, raise kids, or they're trying to, work their normal day job. They're stressed out. They just want to do this thing as fast and as simply as possible. But then on the other side, it's the property professionals involved, the lawyers, the estate agents, the mortgage brokers, who are all struggling with a huge amount of admin, who are all struggling with disjointed technology that doesn't work very well, but also they're being hit by property fraud and by major money laundering threats, which, especially with high-value London property, is one of the big kind of financial threats to the UK economy. So that's really kind of our journey into this. The more we realised that there was this opportunity, and the more we realised it was a very greenfield site. The providers in the UK often are quite legacy and don't service the needs of consumers or the professionals.
So you really try to move the traditional conservative, non-digital real estate or conveyances sector, move them into that digital age with all the advantages thereof.
That's exactly right. And I think one of the things, one of the core threats and kind of challenges for our business has always been that, the legal industry in particular is very risk averse, and they want to make sure that when technology is adopted, it's done in a slow, managed way so that risk is always mitigated. But one of the things that's definitely accelerated that, without a doubt, is COVID and the pandemic, where all of these businesses have had to work online and adopt technology at a much faster rate than they otherwise would have done. So that's definitely driven a lot of the recent growth that we've seen in the business, because all of the lawyers in particular are now having to onboard clients remotely.
Yeah. So your customers are the lawyers and the conveyancers, and they use your identity verification solutions with their clients.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a B2B sales model for us. The lawyers are who we're focused on selling it to. However, the end consumer that uses the app is clearly a key user for us that we are always trying to optimize the journey for.
Yeah, maybe to get a bit of a feeling of that customer journey and how that works out to your audience, could you show us how your app works?
Yeah, of course. Let me share a screen here, and I can show you the overall journey. Hopefully you can see my screen working here. Let me go. Let me bring it up full screen. So. To introduce the app, it's an app that allows the consumer to do multiple things, providing the documentation and the evidence and filling in forms that are all required when you're going through the legal process. I've focused here on just the ID checking task, which is what we use ReadID for, in combination with iProve, as you've already heard. We're not the only ones that use the two in combination. We asked hang on, let me go back. And press play. So we introduced the ID check, asking them to use a passport. We do only accept passports in this journey rather than driving licenses as well. We then use the ReadID SDK, and we use Viz Capture, which is a new ReadID feature that captures the actual image of the passport as well as reading the NFC chip. So this is the Viz Capture in action. And then we move into the NFC scanning, which some of you may be familiar with. Overall, it takes a few seconds to read the chip and to verify it, which you can see it doing now, reading the photograph and then verifying the validity of it. Then we move into the iProve journey, so the face scanning element of it. Here's a quick iProve intro on how it works, and then this is the scanning demo here, which again just takes a few seconds to complete. And that brings us to the end of the journey. So incredibly simple example there of the technology in action, but overall we have a number of different task flows effectively within the app. That's just one of them that is very focused on the ID journey.
Yeah, clear. Yeah, and some things are seemingly simple, but it's just a case of making sure that the complexity is taken away from your audience. As I guess similar to with Justice, you have a non-technical audience in principle, both in the B2B setting as in the B2B2C setting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest challenges for us is getting that journey right in the app for the consumer. All of the same challenges that I'm sure any of your customers have. But we also want to make sure that it's an out-of-the-box solution for the lawyers. So it's an app that works with almost no integration from their side.
Yeah. I saw on your also on your website you do a lot of I'd say kind of education towards your audience on how that works. Was that really needed? So what kind of things did you feel you had to explain, or what kind of questions did you get when you introduced this?
Yeah, of course. So when an individual is asked to use our app, it's an unusual journey, and it's probably similar to the app you guys have just been speaking about. That nobody really wants to download the app, and it's not a fun app. It's not a game. It's not a rewarding app necessarily to do. It's a very process-driven app. But what it does allow them to do is, in our case, buy a house or maybe get a mortgage or whatever that is. So we have to remember that in the user journey and the experience, and what we say to people on the way in. So we spend a lot of time educating people about why the app does what it does, why we ask for what is a lot of very personal information, and why they have to go through this journey. And if they don't, effectively, they're not going to be able to buy the house. So it's trying to educate them and hold their hand through through it. The other elements, one of the other task flows, for example, in our app is using open banking to gather access to gather banking data directly from the bank. Again, a hugely different modern way of doing things. But again, it's all about their data, right? People are increasingly concerned about where their data is and who is getting access to it. So that's a large part of the education piece as well.
Yeah. So really, by creating trust, by explaining what's going on, why it's needed, and so on, and what the technology is. Okay.
That's fine, yeah.
In the beginning, we already mentioned the Her Majesty's Land Registry digital ID standard. What is that standard? What does it require from you as Thirdfort?
Sure. So this is a hugely exciting piece of regulation for us and probably potentially others on this call. The Land Registry in the UK has, it's not a regulator, but it steps into this kind of position of authority whereby it can lead the industry and to a certain extent kind of set the rules. They've been going through a multi-year journey of bringing the whole organisation into the modern world and trying to lead from the front in terms of modernising the home buying process in the UK. One of their latest kind of achievements is this focus on digital ID. After several years really of kind of engagement with the industry, they've announced what they call the digital ID standard. And what it says is that lawyers, if they tick 4 boxes in total, they meet the digital ID standard, which comes with a kind of a safe harbour carve-out. This safe harbour basically says that if a lawyer asks the registry to change a title, and then it turns out that it was a fraudulent transaction, in a normal circumstance, the Land Registry, under the Land Registry Act, is able to basically seek recourse, is able to sue the law firm for this fraudulent case because it and blames the lawyer for it. What this safe harbour says is that if you use and meet our digital standard and it still ends up being a fraudulent case, then we will not sue you. You are protected by this safe harbour. So it's a really powerful rule for the lawyers involved here. If they're able to meet this standard, then it reduces this, significantly limits the risk of potentially one of these fraudulent transactions coming to their door. And I won't go into all of the 4 requirements, but the key ones that are relevant here is the first requirement basically means that they have to use NFC technology to read a chip on a passport or driving license, and they also have to validate the signing key and the digital signatures. So check that not only that the NFC chip is there, but also validate that the information on it is correct. So that's the core implication for us as a provider and for many providers out there that are looking to meet this digital ID standard. I should say that prior to this, we launched an ID checking product more than 2 years ago that was not NFC compliant. So that was the shift then to partnering with ReadID to extend the functionality so that we now do meet the NFC kind of bar that's required for the standard.
So you moved, or you added to optical verification. You added the additional level of the possibility of NFC-based verification, and so it even goes a bit beyond. For example, the FINMA example that I gave, that they actually require you to use NFC in order to become part of that safe harbor.
That's exactly right. So you don't have to use this technology if you're an old school law firm that doesn't want to do it. That's absolutely fine. But you are just taking on more risk as that lawyer. Yeah. So it's not a standard. I think one day the Land Registry will make everybody do this. But for now, this is new technology, in their eyes, and they're very strongly incentivizing people to use it, but they're not requiring it for everybody.
Yeah, so I can imagine even in saving on your insurance premiums, you could almost get the investment directly back. One question from the audience on the UK Land Registry is that did they in one way or the other audit or check your solution, or are they going to?
No, this is their position as they're not a regulator and they don't want to be for obvious reasons. So they've set out this clear set of standards and we have effectively self-certified, if you like, that we comply with those. This is a topic that we're in conversations with the Land Registry on, because there are lots of providers out there that do lots of different things, and one of the difficult things for law firms is trying to understand which ones do meet the standard and which ones meet part of it, and it's on the roadmap, or whatever it might be. But we've been working with the Land Registry for a long time on this, so have been able to kind of work towards the ReadID integration for a while now, to make sure that we tick every single one of those 4 points in a very, very kind of transparent and accurate way.
Maybe a question for Justus in this case. Was your solution audited, or in one way or the other?
Well, it was looked at in many ways.
But primarily internally, or?
Primarily internally, yeah. But we got our own audit department as well. Pen test, hack test, all the tests we did before we even started the pilot, of course. So yeah, definitely before we started, a lot of people from a lot of different angles looked at the total solution.
Yeah, so you really were scrutinized heavily and had to go through.
Well, they should. It is identification and verification, so it's not a bad thing. So it should be done.
Yeah, and doing things wrongly can lead to substantial penalties. That we all know. Also, given time, maybe on your customers, and how do you're live now for roughly a month or so with the new solution? How is it accepted in the market? What is feedback by customers?
Yeah, it's been very good. As you say, we launched the NFC kind of ID standard products just under 2 months ago. In fact, uptake's been very good. We had a lot to compare it to, because we've been out there with our standard ID product now for almost 2 years. So we've been very easily been able to kind of look and see the difference between the two. The user journey is much better, for sure. The uptake from our law firms has been very good. The ones that understand and like the Land Registry rules, have instantly started using it, which is fantastic. So yeah, it's been really well received thus far. And overall, the volumes that we're seeing going through, the volumes that are going through our platform anyway are bigger than they've ever been. It's been a huge year of growth for us as a business. And we see almost 10% of the UK market now flowing, through our system in some way. So we were very, very glad that when we turned the switch on with the ReadID feature, that it could work at very big scale from the moment that we launched it.
Yeah, great. Those are figures to be proud of. Thank you very much, Jack, for joining us from the UK.